I wrote this the night we got out because I could not sleep. We found Marco's boots standing upright and dry in a wet corridor. The floor was slick and cold, but the boots were clean and set neat. He was gone. I keep hearing my name, so I have to put it down. We went in under the west wall of the fortress at first light. 5 of us. Me, Hannah, Oleg, Torres, and Marco. I am an archaeologist. I had the permit and the maps, and I had done the paperwork with the city for weeks. We had a plan. We were to map the tunnels and the cisterns. We were to trace old rooms, draw walls, shoot some photos, and be out by dark. The first room had a crust on the floor. It looked like mineral creep. It tasted like salt when I put a bit on my tongue. Someone had dragged lines of it across 2 doorways. There were tally marks on the wall by the door, like someone counting days, not hours. Old chalk, 5 bars, crossed. Under it a date, today's date. I laughed and said someone had played a joke. Oleg frowned and took a picture. Torres said, "Who else had keys?" No one answered. We started the walk down the first hall. It bent left, then right. The air felt still and old. The smell came in like old church, stale incense, dry and sweet. I knew it from chapels. Not fresh. Thick, like it sat for years. When we reached the first junction, I did what I always did. I marked an arrow in chalk. I wrote the date. I put 4 short tallies under it for the length we walked. Hannah took a bearing and copied it on the big map. The map paper got damp as soon as we unrolled it. Wet seeps came from the joints. It smudged when we wrote. We passed bones on string that hung from nails. Little ones. Bird or rat. Tied with hair or thin fiber. They clicked when we brushed them by mistake. I said we should leave them. Torres said who hung them here. No one lived down here. Hannah said old people did things to bless water. Oleg said not here. He pointed to the crust on the edge of a door. Salt. Thick, like a rim, like someone poured and let it dry. We stepped over it and went in anyway. That was on me. The first wrong tally showed up no more than an hour in. I had chalked 5 marks on the wall in the long hall and wrote pool with an arrow and drew a small square for the room. We came back on that same hall after a loop to check air, and I saw 7 marks where I left 5. The chalk looked the same angle, same pressure. It even had my smudge from where I rubbed my thumb. 2 extra lines stood there and I did not write them. My stomach went tight. I rubbed one with spit. It did not budge. Marco laughed and said, "I forgot what I wrote." I almost believed him. We kept going. We reached a room with veils hung off a wire. Cloth, gray with soot. They were cut to cover eyes. Blind veils. Some had beads sewn on the edge. They smelled like incense and old oil. Under the veils on the wall, someone had scratched a list of names. Not in chalk. Scraped with a nail. I read mine. I saw it clear. My first and last name. Under it was a short line that said, "Do not cross the next line." I looked at Torres. He looked back and said, "Funny." Then from ahead, in the dark, we heard someone say, "Torres," like a whisper. It came from around the turn. He jerked and said, "Marco?" He stepped forward. I grabbed his sleeve, and he pulled away and went around the turn. His headlamp went with him. We heard him say, "Hold on, then nothing." I told the others to hold place. I set down my bag by the veils. I chalked a fat X on the wall. I wrote the time from my watch. We moved to the turn and saw only stone and a line of salt poured across the floor. The way on was clean beyond it. Our lamps threw dust. Torres, I said. My voice sounded small. Something brushed the veils behind us and made the bone charms click. Oleg steadied his breath. Hana said, "We need to stay together." I said, "Torres, answer." His radio clicked once and hissed. We went over the salt line. Again, on me. Less than 10 minutes later, we found the boots. They were Marco's, not Torres's. Upright, dry, tongues tucked in like he always did. They stood in a shallow sheen of water and did not get wet. The helmet that went with them sat upside down. Clean. His radio lay under it and hissed. I lifted the helmet and said his name into the radio. It answered me with my own voice back, half a second late. Then someone else said my name from ahead. Not Marco. A woman. I do not spook easy, but the hair went up on me then. I set the helmet down. I put the boots to the side with my boot and watched the floor under them. It looked the same. I kept my eyes there too long. When I looked up, the tallies on the wall next to the boots had reset. 0. Just the date, today's, under them, under a blank space where I knew I had put 5 little lines. We tried to go back for Torres and Marco the most direct way. We had left a path of chalk and tape. It should have been straight. We turned right at the caved-in pier and left at the notch, and came out at the room with the veils again. My X was on the wall, but it was half gone, like someone rubbed it while the chalk was still fresh. Under it, someone had scratched a time. It matched the minute on my watch when I read it. Hana held the big map up to the lamp. Ash had smeared the lines. Her hand was black with soot from the veils. The map paper got soft and the edges flaked. She swore and folded it, but it was damp and would not stay crisp. We made a plan. We would keep the wall on our left and circle out, no matter what the map said. We would not cross any new salt lines. We drank some water. We checked our lights. We left 3 marks at each turn and called them out. Left 1, left 2, left 3. We passed a room with piles of gray ash in bowls. Sticks of incense stood burned down to nubs. The smell sat heavy. We passed a doorway rimmed in salt so thick it flaked off like old paint. I had to put my hand on the wall to keep steady, and my palm came back gritty. I wiped it on my pants. The grit stayed. I licked a bit off my tooth. Salt. We saw more dates cut into stone. Today's date. Over and over. Some numbers were fresh, with dust still in the cuts. I put my finger in one and felt it bite a little. It had been made not long ago. "Who else is down here?" Hana asked. No one answered. We heard bone click again. A soft wind came down the hall, but we felt no air move. We came to a heavy iron gate. It was up. The grooved tracks on each side had salt crust where it had sat for ages. Someone had swept the floor under it clean. A blind veil hung in the middle of the arch, like an eye cloth for a huge face. The shaft for the gate chain on the right had grease, old but still slick. I wrote the time in chalk on the jamb. I said we should keep it propped. Oleg said, "Why prop a gate that was up?" I looked at the chain. There was no lock. I dropped a wedge in anyway. We went through. On the other side, the tallies we passed were wrong. Marks I had made were different. What had been 3 became 4. What had been 4 became 6. One part of the wall had a neat list that read like a thought in my head. "We should have left the map at the first chamber," it said. I was thinking it as I read. I had not said it. Hana asked what was wrong, and I told her to look. She went quiet. We kept moving. I started to tell the others not to speak their plans out loud. Past a bend, the floor dropped into a room with a low roof. The far wall had curtains of cloth that touched the floor. Blind veils again, dozens, hung like a screen. I pushed my hand into them and came away with soot and hair, The smell of old incense was so strong it made my tongue numb. In the corner, a stack of bowls had been set. They had ash and salt mixed in them, like someone had ground them together. When I bent to look, the ash slumped and showed a print. 5 lines. A hand. Small, like a child's. It did not fit the bowls. Something had pressed into it from above. I do not know why I thought that. That was when Hannah fell. Her foot went through a rotten board by a drain slit. She went to her knee and shouted. Blood showed on her shin. It was not deep, but there was dust and salt in it. She cried out because it burned. I rinsed it with a half bottle of water and wrapped it. She shook and said she was fine. She was not fine. Our time started to feel short then. We had 2 lamps on high and 1 on low. Oleg tapped his battery gauge and frowned. We tried for the exit again. Straight back, no detours. The halls felt the same, but the shapes did not match the first pass. My arrows were there, but they pointed to corners that did not exist. The line of salt we had stepped over was gone. In its place, a smear, like it had been swept. The veils moved without wind. We all heard our names then, one by one. Hannah, from ahead. Oleg. Marco, though he was gone. Torres, far, like he was down a shaft. Then mine, right close to my ear. I turned and hit my hard hat on the wall, and my light went askew. Oleg grabbed my jacket and kept me from stepping into the dark. By the time we came back to the iron gate, my mark on the jam had changed. The chalk line I made had a twin, drawn to be the next thing I would have drawn. A little circle for a cistern. I had not drawn it yet, but I had thought I should. It was there, faint. My mouth got dry. I wiped my hands and found grit under my nails, packed in with black. Ash and salt. It had started to build up under the nail edges, hard and dry. I could not get it out when I tried with a key. It scraped and felt like sand. The wedge I had dropped to prop the gate was not there. The chain creaked. The gate hung above us like a weight. I said to hurry, and we moved through. Oleg went next and then froze. Ahead was a sealed door. Stone slab. It sat in a track with more salt crust in the seam. Cut into the slab was a set of little marks, carved neat, low down, at knee level. They were tally lines. They matched how many steps it took from the iron gate to the slab. I counted. 11 when I first saw it. When I counted again, I counted 12. I swore and rubbed my eyes. In the slab under the marks, a thin scrap of veil cloth had been caught and crushed. It hung like a dead thing. Someone had pressed the veil into the seam and shut the slab on it. The veil was charred on the edge. It spread soot on my fingers. Stale smoke smell came off it, even then. We should have gone. We stood. I put my ear to the stone. I heard nothing at first, just my own breath. Then I heard what I thought was water. Then it was not water. It was someone whispering my next words to me before I spoke them. "Is anybody there?" the whisper said, in my voice. Then I said it, because it was in my head and I could not stop. Then the whisper said, "Help me open," and I reached for the slab because that was the only thing to do. Oleg put his hands with mine. Hannah said no. The scrape of the slab on the track shook salt out in little rains. It fell and clicked on the floor like glass. We pushed and the stone moved, slow at first, then lighter, then a draft slid out, and with it a smell like old incense and old meat. My stomach turned. The slab cleared a foot. A hand came out and grabbed my wrist. It was warm. It was dry. It was strong. Fingers dug in like wire. The skin looked old and stretched, with salt crust in the creases, white. A cloth draped from the wrist and up the arm. A blind veil. I pulled back, but it held me like iron. Another hand came out and threw something onto my face. Dry ash and salt. It rasped into my eyes and mouth. I coughed and saw sparks. It burned like ground glass. I heard a woman speak from inside. She had no breath in her voice. She said my next words the moment before I said them. "Let go," came first. Then I howled it through the grit. She laughed, a low rattle. Oleg hit the arm with his pry bar. The bar sank into flesh and came away with gray on it. No blood. The hand let me go to grab him. It missed and struck his shoulder. He cried out and went down to a knee. Hannah started to drag him back. The slab groaned. The gap widened to 2 feet, then 3. I saw her then. Not all of her. A face, under a veil, thin as paper. The cloth moved when she spoke. The skin around her mouth was cracked. Her lips had lines scored in them. In the dim, I saw the marks were tally marks. Little cuts, thick with salt crust. The veil over her eyes was clean. No holes, no slits. The voice came from behind it. She reached out and caught my hand again and turned it palm up. I tried to yank back. She held me with 2 fingers. She pressed my fingertips into a bowl of ash one had not seen on the floor by the seam. Salt scraped under my nails with a squeal. It packed there tight. She said my name, the whole of it, as if she read it from the inside of my head. She said my next thought word for word. "You knew not to cross," she said. That was in my mind. "You cross anyway." Then she pulled my hand up and smelled it like a dog. I gagged and spat. Black spit hit the slab and ran. Hannah screamed then. The oracle let go of me and grabbed her by the ankle. She yanked and Hannah slid forward, fingers clawing the grit. Oleg tried to stand and fell. The oracle's grip left gray smears on Hannah's boot. I heard bone charms moving somewhere behind us. I heard a veil tear. The woman started to pull her into the gap. I saw the track and the chain for the iron gate out of the corner of my eye. The wedge was gone because I had left it loose. I looked at Oleg. He looked at me and held out his hand. He said, "Help me." The whisper from the slit said it with my voice before he did. I moved. I wish I could say I did not think about it. I thought. I had a split thing in my head. Save her, or pull the chain and drop the gate and maybe jam whatever this was behind stone. I do not write this to say I am brave. I am not. I chose the chain. I grabbed it and threw my weight down. The iron gate screeched and fell. Salt shook off it in clouds. It came down between me and them. It hit the floor and rang like a bell, and pinched my glove in the track. I pulled my hand free and left the glove pressed thin. The oracle laughed again. It sounded like dust. Through the bars, I saw Hannah on her back. The woman's hands were on her calf. She had pulled the boot half off. Hannah kicked and caught her in the face. The veil did not move. The woman did not blink. She dragged again. I jammed a pole through the bars and braced it. The gate moved an inch. Oleg pushed with me. The chain creaked. The slab beyond the gate was still half open and the draft came out, cold and sour. The woman turned her head toward me, though the veil had no eyes. She said, with my voice, what I would beg for next. "Let go." I did not. Not at first. The ceiling above the gate groaned. Bits of stone fell and hit my hat. Something gave in the hinge. The gate shifted in its track. The pole I had braced slid and smashed my hand against the bar. I felt a finger go numb. Oleg shouted. Behind the gate, Hannah cried once, high, and then lower as she ran out of breath. I heard her say my name. I tried to get the pole back in. The oracle's hands gripped and pulled and Hannah slid to the seam, and then her other leg disappeared under the slab. I let go because I had to brace or the gate would bounce. The iron slammed and sang and settled. Dust moved like smoke. Then, quiet. No breath. Just the tick-tick-tick of small salt crystals falling off the bars onto the floor. We backed away from the gate and the slab. I listened for any sound. Nothing. The incense stink did not fade. I put my head to the bar and called. Oleg did too. We heard a whisper. It did not sound like Hannah. It sounded like me. It said, "You left her." Then it said it again in a voice I did not know. Stacked names said against each other, all folded into one. My stomach turned and I threw up. It was black with ash. We had to move. The ceiling made new noises. The tallies on the wall by the gate had more lines than before. They were not mine. I took the map from Hannah's pack where she had dropped it. It was damp and black on the edges. Ash had smeared our arrows into stains. I could not tell what we had drawn. I tucked it inside my shirt anyway. We ran the corridor with our lamps on high. We called for Torres and Marco even though we knew. The halls bent and bent. The lines of salt at doors had been kicked or swept into curls. The bone charms on string clicked and clicked. The blind veils brushed our faces and left soot on our cheeks like hands. The whispers kept ahead of us, calling our names and saying our words before we said them. It made it hard to talk. If I tried to plan, the plan came out of the dark first. Wrong. We looped 3 times. I knew it by the broken pipe that leaked into a dish and the streak of rust it made. Each time the dish had more water. The date cut into the stone under it stayed the same. Today. It was like someone was writing it new each time. My hand hurt. The nails felt tight. Salt sat under them and did not come out. When I clenched my fist, little bits broke free and fell. They sounded like grit in a pan. We found the first room by accident. The one with the doorways and the first salt lines. I saw the tally marks and the date and the X I had made at the start. I did not cheer. I was afraid to say anything out loud. Oleg said, "Steady," in a whisper. We put our backs against the door frame and sat for a minute. We drank the last of the water. The light on my lamp blinked a red, low battery. He had the same. We went up the last passage with our hands on the wall. The surface was rough. The salt crust cut my palm. It burned. It felt like the ash was in the cuts already, grinding. At the turn that should have led to the ladder, the wall had a new scratch. It said my name and then, "Strike the stone 3 times. I did not. The whisper from ahead said, "He will not." I stepped through the door. The ladders were there. The hatch was open. Light from the yard came down like a pale thing. It felt wrong to see it after that. I told Oleg to climb. He did. I checked my watch. The same date. I do not know how much time had passed. The numbers on the watch did not make sense to me then. I went up last. My knee hit a rung and pinched the skin, and that hurt more than anything else had for a moment, because it was simple. At the top, I rolled into the dirt and smelled grass. I almost cried. The caretaker at the gate had gone home hours ago. We crawled to the van. I looked back at the hatch and waited to see a face in the dark. I did not. I heard my name once in my ear. It was my own voice again. "You will come back." I shook my head like that would make it go. We left everything by the hatch for the police. I am supposed to write a full report in the morning. I am supposed to call Hannah's family. I know what I am going to say and it makes me sick. I know I sealed the gate. I know I left her on purpose. I keep seeing the slit and the hands and the way the veil did not shift when she got kicked. I keep hearing the bones click. I went to the sink in the van and washed my hands for a long time. The ash came off the skin. The salt did not come out from under my nails. I tried with the corner of a plastic card. It packed in and made little hard ridges that pushed back. When I tapped my fingertips on the counter, dry grains ticked out and fell. I can hear it when I sit still, like slow rain. It will not stop. When I closed my eyes just now to rest them, I heard a voice say, "Write this," and then I wrote this. I thought I was done, but I hear it again. It says my name and repeats the next words, I think, half a second before I do. It sounds like a woman under a blind veil. It smells like stale incense on the inside of my mouth. If anyone reads this, do not go under that fortress. If you go, do not cross the salt lines. Do not answer when it says your name. Do not let it touch your hands. She did not die down there. She waited. She endures. I am marked. I know because when I reach up and scratch my eyebrow or rub my lip or tap the desk, I hear the same sound each time. Dry salt ticking from my fingernails like falling grit. Wait, before you go, don't forget to subscribe. It's the best way to make sure you don't miss the next one. And while you're here, hit like. It keeps the channel going and helps more people find these stories. Go ahead, watch another. You've got time, right? See you in the next one.